is inspired by a question I received from one of you guys. Miss Destiny wants to know, how do you keep your knotless braids consistent as you move down? And how many strands do you feed in for different size braids? These are great questions I get quite often, so let's dive right into the demo. Today we're working with my girl Crystal. To prep the hair, I have my 120 spool rack handy, Shine and Jam to smooth the natural hair down, my carbon rat tail comb for parting, some clips to pin the hair out of the way, and I'm using this very vibrant teal blue braiding hair because y'all know it's best to practice with a color contrasting to the natural hair so you can see exactly what you're doing. We're going to begin prepping for what I define as a small knotless braid. A small knotless braid is typically about the width of a number 2 pencil. Since the knotless braids are an extension of a person's natural hair, the size will vary depending on the person's hair density. To prep for small knotless, I pull pieces off equivalent to about half the width of a pencil. It's really just about a pinch. Normally for a full head of small knotless, you would want to prep about 240 to 280 individual pieces, or 2 full 120 spool racks. If you don't have multiple spool racks, you can overlap the rows like this. And 1 full rack will get you through a full head. Sometimes less, sometimes more. It really depends on the head that you're working with. To begin the braid, I'm going to section a piece of hair about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch and begin feeding in the strands. For a detailed beginner's guide to the knotless technique, check out this video right here. I'll be sure to link it in the cards above. If the client's hair is dense or thick, you may only need 2 or 3 strands to start. If the client's hair is on the thinner side, you may need 3 to 4 strands to start. Crystal's hair is a medium to light density, so I'm only going to need 3 strands to start her feed-in. One thing to consider with smaller braids is that it can be harder to tuck the natural hair because you may not have enough braiding hair to cover it, especially if the hair is really thick or it's a blunt cut. It's okay because the smaller the braid, the less flyaways typically occur. Do your best and just keep it on moving. So we've got the braid started and we're moving on down. But I noticed the braid is starting to taper faster and become skinnier or shorter. To extend the braid and keep it consistent until I reach my desired length, I'm going to feed in small pieces of the hair to build it back up. Now here's where your expertise comes into play. What you don't want to do is feed in too much because it will create a bump. Instead, using the existing hair you have prepped, just split one of those pieces and feed them in separately. The smaller the piece you feed in, the less noticeable the transition. So that I am not stopping the split pieces all the time, what I tend to do to save time is just split a piece over one of the spools, pull the hair down to completely separate it, all in one motion. Where you choose to add your feed in is entirely up to you and will depend on you feeling the need to do so. All of this takes what, everyone? Say it with me. Practice. That's right. Practice and experience will get you acclimated and used to doing this process. Moving on to part 2 of the question, how much hair do we need for a medium-sized braid or a large braid? Now, before I answer that, let me disclaim first. Every braider is going to define their sizes to their standards. I've seen mediums look small and larges look medium. Some people define them by the size of the braid and some people define them by the size of the part. At the end of the day, we don't post these pictures for our health, y'all. If you don't like what a particular braider is offering as far as the sizing goes, find one that suits your needs. Trust me, it saves time and uncomfortable conversations later. Anyways, for purposes of this demo, here's my take on a medium. I'm going to use the same hair that I prepped for the small, but for each piece I insert, I'm going to pick up 2 strands. This is a good marker for how much hair you might need to prep for. Again, the same rules apply. You may only need 2 or 3 strands to start. If the client's hair is on the thinner side, you may need 3 or 4 strands to start. The only difference is I've started with a section about 1 inch wide, so I've got a larger piece of hair. The upside to also having smaller pieces prepped in advance is that you don't have to split as much when you need to feed in later. So for example, if you have a client who wants braids down to their thighs, I know they don't make hair long enough for that, so I'm going to prep one brack for my base and another with smaller pieces to extend the length. Another thing you'll notice here is that I'm able to tuck more hair because I was able to add more hair. If the braid gets skinny too fast, remember, just feed in smaller pieces to keep the braid consistent. For the larger knotless braids, I'm going to prep pieces about the size of a pencil. Typically, I'll have to feed in 4 to 5 pieces to build up a large braid. You can start the feed in at the root as usual, but I have also found with really thick hair types, it helps to braid one rotation of the natural hair first before I begin the first insert. This puts a little extra tension on the root to smooth it out. Either way works just fine. It's really just dealer's choice. So that's it for today's lesson, you guys. Thank you, Destiny, for submitting your questions. I really hope this helps you in your journey. I'm happy to answer questions anytime I'm able to do so. If the rest of the class learned something today, let me get an amen and smash that thumbs up button on your way out. If you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing for videos like this every week. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.